Good morning, I'm Kevin Price. Delighted to be with you, talking to you about you and your business. Got a lot to talk about on today's program. Want to get straight to it. I got to one and only Chris Kidd. He's with Chris Kidd. That's KIDD.com here in the studios. He's a regular contributor on The Price of Business, providing great content, video, articles, and so much more. Bringing an interesting perspective. He's got great insight and wisdom when it comes to personal finances and helping companies and individuals grow financially and take their company and purposefully in the right direction. I consider him a thought leader in this process and love the guests that he brings on. And today is no exception. In fact, before the show even began, the producer and I was saying, you always bring great guests. And I think today is going to be another great example of that. Welcome, Chris.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you. Tell us a little bit more about ChrisKidd.com and then introduce your guest today.
Well, basically, ChrisKidd.com is just my web domain where people come to find out more about me and also learn, what they can do financially and stuff, get some tips there. I'm a financial coach, and basically what I do is teach people how to get more out of their money, either handling their finances better, becoming better investors so that they don't have to rely on hope and somebody's, what they tell them to do. And also definitely entrepreneurship, because I think everybody needs their own business.
Yeah, very good. And your guest today?
My guest today is Jordan Black. He's had about a 10-year career in the NFL, and now he is the owner of Snap Fitness in Missouri City, as well as Advanced Mirror Solutions.
Excellent. We're glad to have you on the program today. And let's talk a little bit about your career. Tell us about your background, where you went to school, and your college experience.
I went to school at the University of Notre Dame. I really wanted to go to Texas when I was in high school. John Mackovic was the coach at the time, and no offense to John Mackovic, it just didn't seem right. So I decided to leave the state, went to Notre Dame. A little bit of a culture shock up there for me, but it served me well. I went on, I was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs and played 10 years, finishing up in Washington for the Redskins.
Very good. And your position?
I was an offensive tackle. I've lost a little bit of weight since then, so most people think that I played tight end. So.
Smart to lose a little weight if you're no longer an offensive tackle.
I was
that's going to go to places you don't want it to go once you retire.
That's right. I was tired of carrying that weight around.
I understand. Chris?
Well, I've got to ask a really kind of off-topic question, but you grew up in Dallas, right?
Correct.
So what is that like? Did you lose some friends when you went to Washington? Or
Believe it or not, I think I got a taste of that going to Notre Dame. My grandfather was a die-hard Texas fan. And I remember the last game I played at Notre Dame, he took the Notre Dame hat off, and he was like, threw it on the ground, and he's like, I'm glad I don't have to wear that hat anymore. So, but yes.
Props to him for wearing it, right?
Right, exactly. I was a Dallas fan growing up. Once you get to the NFL, you don't have a team anymore. You just kind of enjoy watching whoever it is. But, my family always supported me. Probably didn't like the Redskins too much, but that's okay.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the experiences of Kansas City versus Washington.
Kansas City is an unbelievable football atmosphere. The tailgating before the game, I mean, it's a sight to see, smoke rising from the parking lot, everybody barbecuing. Just a fantastic football town. Have a lot of great memories, and it's one of the great places to play.
There's not much else to do in Kansas City, and by the way, I love Kansas City, and I'm not being completely fair because they got some cool things. They got the Truman Museum, World of Fun.
Great
I've been there a couple of times. Yeah, but I mean, it has almost a college feel to it.
It does, and there's charm about that. Football, showing up to the game as opposed to watching it on TV, I think is a priority for the fans there, and you can just you feel the support more so than anywhere else.
And what's interesting is that the fan base is way beyond that area. The fan base, like, for example, I got friends in Oklahoma City who fly every single weekend to watch games in Kansas City. Oklahoma not having, a professional team, they've just claimed Kansas City. And I bet you have that from all those neighboring states that don't have their own team.
Yeah, and beyond that, every single road game that we ever played, there was always Kansas City fans in the crowd. Always run into Kansas City fans regardless of where I am. I mean, from Washington to Texas, they're everywhere. So a lot of fans.
Never seen a more brutally passionate city, in my own opinion, than Washington. When I was there in the '80s, of course, that was when they won every 2 or 3 Super Bowls. You know, it was maybe a different era than when you were there, but they were really rabid. It was pretty insane in the '80s when I worked up there in public policy.
They're very intense. Unfortunately, in Washington, it's been rough the past few years. The fans are still very rabid, but they're going to let you know exactly how you feel on game day if you're not doing what they want you to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure Chris is going to talk about the business side. Go right ahead, Chris.
Well, yeah, what's the transition period from coming into the NFL, and you hear so many stories of players that Vince Young's kind of an example lately. I mean, you hear the media really blows it up when an unfortunate thing like that happens. How was your transition from leaving the NFL to getting into, I guess, what you would call maybe the regular world?
You really have to look at the big picture. Something I did was I always considered what was life going to be like after football, and how was I going to be prepared. I remember I did little things. My first year in the NFL, I literally lived in a $300 a month apartment, 1 bedroom. Just very, very simple. I was like, okay, this first year I'm just going to put away every dime that I earn. I wasn't as good about that later on, but I think I did well with the money that I was blessed enough to earn, and I'm in a position that at this point in my life I can make it work for me.
How'd you get into the entrepreneur bug? I mean, you obviously you're working for yourself. You didn't go out and find a regular job or anything. Where'd that get you?
I've always had kind of an inventive type personality, and I always knew in the back of my mind that being an entrepreneur and owning my own business was probably the way that I was going to go. That was really solidified in my mind. I guess it was the summer of 2010. I had a job interview with an advertising company here in Houston, and it was miserable. Realizing that it was now 9 years since I graduated college, coming in, I was going to have kids younger than me that would be over me. And in general, I was just done with having coaches yell at me. I was ready to be in control of myself, and that interview just, definitely set me straight. I want to be my own boss and run my own business.
I think it's interesting. I personally think, in spite of the fact that you hear all these horror stories about athletes after they leave, their professional sports career, I personally think that background is perfect training for entrepreneurship. You're very risk-oriented because very few of you are going to make it to the highest level, but you're spending your whole time up to that highest level doing the next thing to get there. Even though the vast majority of you aren't going to make it, you know how to lose. You lose all the time. Even the most successful players lose all the time. Understanding failure outside of the classroom is crucial, because an F is terminal in academics, but it's not in athletics. It's just, that's just part of doing life. I personally think it's great training, but obviously people need so much more in order to have the discipline and success required to be an entrepreneur. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I like that you brought up risk, because risk is a relative term. The key to managing risk is to do as much research as possible. When it comes to football, there's always the risk of injury. There's the risk of being cut. So how do you prepare yourself to minimize that risk? The same approach applies in business. Do as much research as you possibly can, minimize the risk, and what may be risky to someone else is no longer risky to you. So whatever risk there is, try to minimize it, and if you can minimize it, it's probably something that you should pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead there, Chris. By the way, we're doing an extended interview. We have some things happen with our show schedule that's permitting us to do this, and so we're keeping you a little longer, and we're glad to do it, Jordan.
Absolutely.
Chris?
Well, I really liked what you said about when you first came into the league and you didn't go crazy like so many people do. Just all right, let's go car shopping as soon as we get in, and let's go buy a $5 million house and just go crazy. You stayed in a $300 a month apartment, and that's like a real culture shock to a lot of people. There's like, most people would believe that there's no way that anybody in the NFL does that, and it reminds me of a friend of mine named Frank McKinney, and he builds like huge multi-million-dollar homes in South Florida. And kind of with his story, how he saved up his money and was living in, just a small like efficiency apartment when he was building mansions. And he moved out of the apartment into a regular 3-bedroom, 2-bath house because they were having a kid. So I think where did that come from? I mean, the mindset.
Probably my grandfather. Early on, he was always talking to me about investing my money, and he's a child of the Depression. I think we don't listen to people that actually went through that. I mean, I was probably 6, 8 years old when he started talking to me about investing and mutual funds. And I remember we opened up my own mutual fund account with Fidelity when I was probably 14 years old. So he's the one that really taught me to, when I open the newspaper, I need to look at the business page first and look at what the market's doing and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I chose to do that, but it was probably my grandfather that really instilled that in me.
Yeah, and that's good. You got to love that kind of grounding. And I would say that consistently, the number one thing I see that leads to really, I don't know how you describe it other than self-loathing for these athletes is in self-destruction, like a time bomb, is that they had nothing to stand on before they got into that career. I mean, literally nothing except for their talent to stand on. And it's almost like the lottery ticket winner, more than half of whom lose everything within 5 years. It's the same type of people. They had no business with money because they didn't know how to handle money, and therefore the money disappeared. I mean, I'm sure you saw a lot of that, Jordan.
And this is probably, I was a psychology major, but so that a little of that is about to come out. But money, you can't use money to define who you are or define what you're worth as a human being. I think when people understand their value is not determined by money, then they'll be, I guess, more responsible with their money.
You seem way too level-headed. And
this is our producer, by the way.
I was just wondering, have you ever considered maybe being an action star in Hollywood, or B, a politician?
I've considered all of those things. I'm as far as Hollywood's concerned. I mean, I'm just waiting for the phone to ring. Politician, I don't know. That tends to be a dirty business. And
yeah, boy,
I can tell you lots of stories if you want to get together and chat about that.
Yeah.
By the way, you can learn more about Jordan Black at snapfitness.com. That's snapfitness.com/Missouri City, MISSOURI City. No, nothing after that. So snapfitness.com/Missouri City. And final thoughts from you, Chris Kidd.
Well, I've definitely enjoyed having you on. This has been very enlightening for, I think, a lot of people that are listening. So thanks for being our guest. It was awesome.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, good stuff. By the way, Chris Kidd, make sure you reach out to him, learn more about him. Chris Kidd, KIDD.com. ChrisKidd.com. Thanks to both of you, gentlemen.
Thank
Good
you.
Stuff. All right. When we come back, much more for you. Do you want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com, and you're listening to The Price of Business.